All right. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Noobie Photographer Podcast. I am your host, Nathan Holritz. It is good to have you here today. For those of you that may be live streaming, don't be shy. Get involved with this conversation. We want you to take advantage of the opportunity to ask our guests questions, to comment, join the conversation, make this a group discussion ultimately. That's one of the big advantages of this live stream. For those of you that are listening to the audio version after the fact, please make sure to follow us, Noobie Podcast, Noobie Podcast on Instagram, and you can keep up to date with the upcoming live stream schedule. We usually do 1 to 2 episodes a week, and you can come be part of the audience and ultimately, again, join the discussion. We would really, really love that. On that note, I want to go ahead and introduce a brand new guest to the Noobie Podcast, not a brand new guest to the podcasting arena with me. Shaun Austin is here. Thanks, Shaun, for coming to hang out with me. I'm really stoked about this.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This is something I could do all day long, especially with you. You're such a great host, and I've loved being on the other podcasts. I'm really looking forward to leaning in with this newbie type of photography podcast. Thanks for having me.
Well, no, we were talking for a little bit before, and just to kind of break the fourth wall, we talk more than just before a podcast interview. You and I are an ongoing discussion on a regular basis. We're friends. We've been in the industry together now for like 17 years or something like that. It's kind of weird to think about. And then we're part of a mastermind too. And so we've developed a pretty close relationship over the years. But I have the privilege not only to call you a friend, but ultimately to get to work with you in an upcoming conference that we're hosting called the Noobie Photographer Conference. And today is a little bit of a teaser, if you will, for some of the content you're going to be presenting there.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. You know, the majority of our industry is probably in this boat. And so it is easy for us to constantly fill that top of our, funnel, as I would call it, with my companies that I serve this industry with. And the sad thing about it is how fast they're going out of business. You know, every 100 photographers that start a business this year, according to statistics that we currently have, 85 of them would go out of business. And I'm done with that. So people that are going to be a part of our arena, I just want to provide tools and be part of conferences to where we can pour back, because I've been a starving artist. I've been a successful photographer. I've gone on and built bigger businesses for creatives, and I want to help. If there's anything that I do for the rest of my life, it is to serve other people with resources and really here is the keys to your success. You have to show up and do it, but I want to impact the industry more than anything right now.
Well, we have a cool opportunity, you and I, and we're actively learning as business people and as individuals, but we have a cool opportunity to be able to share, particularly with new photographers, some of the mistakes that we've made, and hopefully be able to minimize the potential for those mistakes on their part, and guide them to that place to move beyond even that 5-year mark that I think everybody kind of knows. You start a business and you hope you can break that 5-year mark, but to move way beyond that as well.
Yeah, as I've been building my talk for the conferences in January that I'm doing, it's hard to read because it's just statistics on companies across the U.S. and it's like the 1-year mark, the failure rate, the 2-year, the 3-year. It gets really hard in the 4 and 5-year. And my current business with Kiss Books is 16 years old, and I'm just so grateful because there's not even a statistic on it. And I'm like, I'm so grateful for it, but I've had so much pain through the whole entire thing, and I think I've learned from the pain. I'm not avoiding pain like I once was, but I want to alleviate as much pain for you. It's like with my kids, I'm the same way. I would rather them not go through the pain. Sometimes they choose it seems like, and I'm like, yeah. Please, Lord, stop choosing that way. Yeah. But I'm also like, if I can help them avoid it and be more of a guide instead of like this dictator, like I know what's right, I want to do the same thing for our industry. And I absolutely love when I get the chance to do that. So thanks for the platform.
Oh, well, and thanks for being a part of it. And just for anybody who's not aware, noobieconference.com, if you want to go to that URL, you can see more information about this conference. It's January 10th and 11th here in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It is geared specifically to new photographers within the first 3 years of business. And fortunately, Shaun is going to be part of that speaker group there. Shaun, you already alluded to it briefly, but just before we get into the topic today, we just briefly introduce yourself, the brands that you're a part of as well.
Yeah, my name is Shaun Austin Gordon, and I just am so honored to be able to be running 3 businesses. I have my personal brand, which is Become You. That's I actually sit in a seat with Nathan, and we've hired a coach to go through a mastermind together, and that's what I'm going to do with my personal brand, Become You. We're going to build these circles of people that want to become the best versions of them. And then I have the Album Assistant, and the Album Assistant is in beta right now. We are building this beautiful, what I think is beautiful to me at least, where we have 2 programs, like it says right here, where we will do album sales for you, and that one is in big time beta. We're still building the platform, the CRM for that. And then the do it yourself is the education that I'm currently giving out right now. Actually, in November, we're going through a 4-week course where I show you how to serve every single one of your clients with an album. And then my biggest and the company I'm most proud of is Kiss Books. I started that 16 years ago. I'm the co-founder of that, currently the sole owner of it, and the CEO and visionary of the company, where we help photographers go from starving artists to successful through serving their clients with a product, and it is albums. We serve the industry with albums and with software over there.
Cool. And I popped that up on screen for anybody who's not live streaming with us. If you could just go to kiss.us, and then you can go to thealbumassistant.com to learn more about the Album Assistant, and then follow Kiss and Shaun at Kiss Books on Instagram. We'll link to all this in the show notes at bokehpodcast.com, bkmu.today. And then, man, I'm trying to think, Shaun Austin on Instagram as well. We'll put them all in the show notes.
Yeah.
At noobiepodcast.com. But Shaun, let's jump into the conversation today. I know we only have just a few minutes here, but I'm really excited you recently joined the speaker list for the conference, and you're going to be closing out that conference talking about how to actually apply the information that we're taking in there at the conference. Because you and I know, being in the industry for as long as we had, we're probably both guilty of it as well, but going to conferences, you're taking in all this wonderful information for people who have experience, who have proven these concepts. And it's easy in the moment to just be like, oh, that sounds like a great idea. And then we go home and don't do much with it. Or we listen to a podcast, or we watch a YouTube video, we take on Instagram stories, and there's really great information to be had. And yet the question mark is, what are we actually doing with that information at the end of the day? Can you relate to that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we live in an age where data is literally in the palm of our hands or in our pocket, and we have access to so much stuff. So success is in our pocket if we want it, but it really is about showing up. And so what keeps us from that? And that's really why I started my personal brand, which has Become You, because I've been in that boat where I'm like overwhelmed with the information, and I would try this and I just didn't stay disciplined enough, or I didn't understand why I was doing it, or the destination that I was headed to. Like, where am I actually going? Why do I want, I want to become a 6-figure photographer. It's like, cool, why? And understanding so much of that. And there's a book. It's like, start with why. And there's information. Like, we are in information overload, and it feels a little bit overwhelming. But if we take time to set an intention for who I personally want to be and the impact that I want on the world, then it gives me an avenue to go be in. Then it's like, great, now here's the book to read. Here's the YouTube channel to go to. Here's the podcast to follow. Now I know, versus just like, you could be anything. But that's great when you're 21. When you start to decide, like, I'm having a family potentially, or I want to make X amount of dollars, it's like having an avenue to be that and to go and become that. It helps so much more pave the avenue of like where I need to go for this information.
Yeah, I like that. I think about something that we talk about quite a bit on the Bokeh podcast, actually. You and I probably talked about it as well, that idea of a big picture view, an overarching set of goals that acts almost like a filter for that information that we take in, right? Because it would be easy. It's like a fire hydrant of information just constantly all the time, like you said, through this device that we can so easily access. And there's no way to effectively filter through all of that if we don't have some type of clear intention about what it is that we're trying to accomplish as an individual, and then as a result as a business owner. There's this kind of flip side of the conversation, and I want to get your take on this, but when I think about all the content that I've consumed over the years, I've realized that in some ways I could almost stop, and I'm hesitant to say this, but we'll give context. I could almost stop reading or taking in additional content if I just applied, say, the top 5 to 10 most impactful books in my life. If I just applied those principles consistently, I would actually be in a really, really good spot. but I know that's a bit of an extremist approach. What are your thoughts on like a healthy balance in that regard?
I've done that. I mean, there was a year where I read an astronomical amount of books. I think it was like 50 plus books, maybe 60 books. And I was like, look at this trophy. I've now read 60 books. And I didn't do shit with any of these books because all I was trying to do was to tell you how great I am, and I've now read 60 books. Now I read a new book, and I typically have a handful of new books that I read each year, but I read 3 of the same books every single year. And I read Essentialism, I read 3 Signs of a Miserable Job, and I read Atomic Habits, because those are ones that every time I read it, it's a reminder of the things that I'm committed to do, and I learn something new because I'm listening to it through a new filter of like, now my kids are this age, or now my business is this size, or I've started a business that's in this world. And so it's really helped me stay like focused on like, I know I want to be somebody that is like James Clear says here, build your disciplines on a system. You don't, rise to your level of skill, you fall to the level of systems. And I need reminded of that because I'm like, I can do a lot of things pretty well, and I'm grateful for that. But if I don't have a system on it, I'm going to be spinning my wheels at some point. Essentialism teaches me it's about the next most important thing, not about the, priorities was not a plural word. It was only priority until the 1400s. And so it's like, if I don't plan my life, someone or something else will, and so those books remind me of it. So I read those on the regular versus trying to read 60 books every year saying like, how great am I that I'm reading all these books and not really doing anything with it.
It's hit me in the last probably even 6 months in particular, just the realization of, man, so much of life is about the basics. Like we want to make it fancy and complicated. Like you said, we want to pride ourselves for having read all these books or accomplished all these different things. But at the end of the day, so like it's that 80-20 principle. 20% of what we do makes 80% of the impact. And if we're consistent in showing up at those the 20% of the things really well, the impact is so much more significant than trying to take in any and everything and apply it all at the same time.
Yeah, I love to have fun, and I love like the newness, and I get shiny object syndrome sometimes. But
Same.
when it comes down to it, it's like the best areas of my life are the ones that I've been disciplined at, and I have a system that I've set it on, because then I have a measurable difference. I just got my I'm going to post it in our Become You group, but I just got my numbers, 4 months. This is what I've progressed at because I've been consistent with my diet. I've been consistent in the gym, and I have a program that I follow. I go to the gym 6 days a week. I eat X amount of protein a day. I do these specific things where it's like, do I love sugar? Yes. And I've abused it, for most of my life, but it's not the person that I want to be, and it's not the destination that I want to have. And so now that I've been consistent about it and I have these measurables along the way, it's so basic and so boring. I'm like, I don't even like talking about it sometimes because they're like, is this like, I don't know if I want to hang out with this guy. He goes to bed at like 9:30 every night and gets up at 5 a.m. and he has shakes throughout the day and then one meal a day. It's like, that sounds super fun, but it's like, you know what? We're going to go make a difference in the world though. And I'm going to look damn good doing it. Maybe not today, but I'm looking better and better. That's what the numbers are saying. Yeah. And so I'm just grateful for that consistent discipline work, and you are an inspiration to me in that world. And I really appreciate that about you.
Oh, thanks, man. Well, that's super kind. I think you and I both are realizing just the significance of the consistency and applying what seem like relatively basic concepts, right? But if we apply them consistently, there's so much benefit from that. And it's kind of encouraging. It's a bit of a relief because I know that you and I are both, I guess we call ourselves overachievers in some way. Like we're always trying to do the next thing and get better. And it can become kind of exhausting at times. Mm-hmm. And just realizing the last few months, man, we don't have to shut that down altogether, but let's call it, again, 80% of my time can be focused on being consistent with the basics. Mm-hmm. And that's going to have massive payoff if I just show up consistently. I'm encouraged by that. So thanks for echoing those thoughts too.
Yeah, you have a photo that you can show them of you and I walking down the street of when we were not living those principles. And who knows where we were headed and I know what we look like because I've seen the photo multiple times. Yeah. But when it comes down to it, it was like, where was I headed there? I didn't know. I thought I knew, and it was interesting because it was like my target was the side of a barn. So if I hit it, I would have known I hit the side of a barn. But I want to hit a target that's like this, that I can celebrate because it is a tiny target, and I painted it exactly how I wanted it, and then I went after it. And it takes way more discipline and actions to make that happen. But when you hit it, it is way more worth celebrating than when I just hit the side of a barn.
Well, in some ways, it's easier to have that kind of specific target, though, right? Again, going back to our earlier conversation, if it's just, again, there's so many potential opportunities or options, but if we aren't clear for our own sake about what it is that we're trying to accomplish, it's so easy to get just caught up in, like you said, the shiny object syndrome. I'll do this thing, or maybe I'll try that, and I'll do a little bit of that. Life gets super complicated as a result. And then, yeah, we might hit the side of the barn. It's way easier to have that small target because now we know exactly what we need to be spending our time and effort and energy on. And there's really no excuses in the end if we're not headed in that direction. So yeah, I love that reminder.
Yeah, it's the trivial mini is how the Essentialism book says it. The trivial mini is what so many of us are caught up on, because there are so many amazing things to do in the world that I don't have time to do all of them. But yet I'm doing so many of the trivial mini that aren't that great. What about the vital few is what it talks about. And that's those targets, the vital few that I'm choosing to go do. Like if there is 100,000 amazing things to do in this world, which I believe there are, I don't have time to get all those done. So I get to pick from those 100,000 what doesn't I want to do really, really well. I'm going to enjoy life so much more. I'm going to impact the world. It's vital. It's the vital few versus like, most of the world, I believe, and this feels like a judgment maybe, but it's like we're caught up in the trivial. We're caught up in this like mess of things, and it's like no wonder we are where we are, because it's frustrating, because when we focus on those vital few, man, life gets so much better. It's difficult. The easy part is going after that, because it's like, this is amazing. I'm going to go after this amazing thing, and what's hard about it is finding the thing that we want to. So we get to sift through the things of like what we love, what our vision is, what our like skills are, what we enjoy, and then we get to pick from those things. What's the one I'm going to say yes to in the lot of the things that I need to say no to, or I get to say no to.
As much as I'm trying to fixate on this 20-minute time frame for this podcast episode, I don't think it really matters that much in the scheme of things. And so to that end, actually, I want to follow this tangent for a second, if you don't mind, Shaun. That idea of choosing the thing or the things, the small group of things to focus on, I think is overwhelming to a lot of photographers. The idea that they have to choose a passion and then focus their time and effort and energy on that thing. I think there's a sense of FOMO. There's also maybe just generally a sense of confusion as to like, I don't know what direction to go. What advice would you give to a photographer who's trying to figure out that clear direction to move in?
Yeah, like as far as personality types go, it doesn't define me, but it tells you a little bit about who I am. I'm a 7 on the Enneagram. I'm an ENFP in the Myers-Briggs, so that tells you a little bit more. Like I have FOMO, like to the nth degree, being in that world of that what I'm efficient in. So this is a difficult path for me. But what am I missing out on? And what's wild is like I've done this with my kids, and so I didn't realize what I was missing out on by trying to be everything for my kids versus being the in the relationship as my role as a parent. Call that what you will, but I get to design what I want to be as the dad and what I think they want and how I choose to learn how to love them and be in relationship with them. From a photography standpoint, it's like, but what about this? This seems like I could go make money doing this, and I could go make money doing this, and this style seems fun this week, and what about this one next week? And then when somebody looks at, like, Instagram is a great example, when you start to scroll through it, it's like, I'm not really sure what this person does, so I'm going to put them on a shelf as a photographer. But if I'm looking for a photographer that photographs this specific style with this particular product, and the end goal is these particular things with this budget, and you fit that, then they know that's the target that's this big. So when they found, and you can charge for that, by the way, way more than being the one that is like the Costco. I can find everything. Yeah, the generalist. If you know what you found, it's so much, like there's so much value there, both emotionally and any resource that you want to talk about, but financially. So you become a specialist in an area, and when they found you, it is like such a great feeling for you, since you painted that and you're like, this is the hill that I stand on. When you come join that person, it's like you're going to pay to be here, and this is the outcome you're going to get, and you know exactly what you're going to get. And then I get to serve you really well because it's something I've worked on really hard. And sure, do I miss out on other things? Yeah, but what am I actually missing out on? I'm missing out on this like vague, like everyone's doing that, but I get to be the one to do this for you and make a difference. Impact is one of the three things that is at every human core value, making a difference in somebody's life. It's being seen, being heard, and knowing that what we are doing is making a difference. If you get to do that one thing and make a difference because of you've set yourself up as a specialist, as a photographer, what a gift it is to you and to everybody that you get to serve.
But I guess I still go back to that question, though, of how do I make the choice for that particular thing? I understand the significance of, and I'm speaking as a photographer here, kind of, but I understand the significance of specialty, like you're describing. But it's the choosing the specialty that I think freezes photographers a lot of times. They're like, but if I commit to this, I mean, there is that sense of FOMO that you described. But if I commit to this thing, then I don't get to do this thing, and I don't know if I should do this thing, or if I should do this thing. How do you ultimately make that decision? How do you make that choice?
Yeah. Well, first off, should is a word that I try and avoid. It's almost a bad word in my language because should is basically saying like it's a shame in my book because I run to shame. And so should is like don't should on yourself and don't should on other people. But how do you make that choice? What's beautiful about it is that's the discovery. In Essentialist, the book that I'm reading, in Essentialist actually goes through those things. And what's great is you get to define what you love. Your heart will align with these things. And as you do discovery work, it's like, but I don't want to miss out on this. Cool. Then go look at it. And what is it for you? Does it bring you does it give you access to joy easier, or is it difficult for you to be in that? Is your skill set line up with it? Does, I recently asked somebody what you want, and they're like, I want to be happy. And it's like, okay, that's very vague. But we do look for the things that make us happy. And so if this thing makes us happy, it's probably because it aligns. Like if I wanted to be an adventure photographer that photographs in Yosemite and I photograph elopements of people on Taft Point, it's very, very specific. But when I'm standing up there with that view, my heart is happy. My creative juices are absolutely flowing. Now, will that wear off someday? Potentially. I mean, if you've ever been there, you may think it may never, but I also did 100 engagement shoots one year in Laguna Beach, in one of the most beautiful beaches that there is out there. And I said, I don't ever want to take this for granted. Well, 75 engagement sessions into it, I was like, this is getting to be a bit of a chore, But every single one of those people was like, these are the best photos I've ever had taken of me because I was so good at it, And so I think when it comes down to it is like sifting through the things, finding out what does make your heart happy. And it feels very emotional and things like that. But then getting to do it over and over and then becoming the best at it is one of the best feelings. One of my slides, little heads up for it says mediocrity sucks, and it says average, being average sucks, and it really does. Being average feels like meh. Like what are you? It's like I'm mediocre. Like when somebody, can you imagine this, Nathan? If somebody said, "How are you doing?" You're like, "I'm mediocre." Maybe you're being honest, but I either want you to be like amazing or shitty, because those are at least two hills. If you're mediocre, it's like, I don't know if I want to talk to you. Like, I don't really want to have a mediocre. Yeah, I don't want to have a mediocre, but I want to talk about your shitty because I want to get under that with you and carry that with you. And if you're having amazing and you're amazing, it's like, tell me more about that. I want to celebrate your amazingness, or I want to carry your shittiness. I don't want to hang out in mediocre land as a human. There's just not enough time for that.
So I guess to kind of sum up what you're talking about, one, we're looking at values, really is what it comes down to, right? Those things that make that, like you talked about, the emotional impact, the things that make us feel something, that bring a sense of deep joy and fulfillment. Number one, that will help guide us to make the choice about what direction to go. Number two, we're looking at our skill set. So we're looking for an opportunity that will leverage a skill set or set of skills that we are particularly good at.
Because we like to be good at things,
Yeah.
And so that skill set matters, yes.
Wow. Okay, that's good. Okay, well, I know that we went on a tangent there, but I appreciate the additional context and perspective. That's super helpful. I guess to get back to this conversation about how to get the next thing done, we all know that we are potentially overwhelmed with the amount of information that we're taking in on a regular basis. We've talked a little bit about how to narrow in our focus on what to focus on, what to spend our time on. But the question then is, how do we take that information and go apply it more effectively to our business? I know you're going to be talking about this a lot more at the conference in more detail, but can we at least touch on a couple of the most important points innate to that effort?
Yeah, when it comes down to it, it is like, all the things that we've already talked about, and then now you have a destination in mind. So how do I do that? How do I do that really well? How do I actually get to that destination? And so having a map and all these things is wonderful. What I'm going to have at the conference is what I call a GSD sheet. It's a get shit done sheet, and so on it, it is just like it is a plan. And that's really what it takes. This is the system. This is the system that this is going to sit on. And you basically write out those things, and then you go do those things. And it is a map, because one of the things that I've learned is like I travel a lot. And so at an airport, there's times where I'm at a new airport, which is pretty rare. But let's say I fly to like Memphis. I've just never been to Memphis Airport. So I get to Memphis Airport, and I'm looking for D, I'm looking for D37. It's a gate that I need to get to. If I don't know where I currently am, I do not know how to get to D. So it takes knowing where I am and knowing where D, because on a map, it's going to tell me where D is, but what also it's going to tell me is where D49 is, because that's exactly where I need to get, and that I am at A31. It says you are here. It's one of my favorite parts of the map, because if I don't know where I'm at, and I'm like, if this is D and I'm at A, I'm going to go this direction. But if I need to get to D and I'm at F and I don't know, and I start going the direction that I think I need to go, I'm going to end up at like T, which is the international. And I'm trying to go to Memphis, not to like London, Right. So knowing where you are, knowing where you're headed, and the plan to get there, because there's 10 different ways I could get there. I can have Delta pull the Porsche up and take me around because I'm super bougie, or I can, call a wheelchair, or I can walk in the underground terminal, or I can take the train. There's 4 different ways I just said you can get there. So that's what the GSD sheet does, is it creates a plan. Here's your destination. The destination's up top. This is what I want to go apply in my business. I want to put albums in my business. And then it walks you through, here are the things to do. And one of the best things about the sheet is it has a checklist. And we love to check things off. As humans, it's like, that is what success means. It just means I'm accomplishing something. There, I'm successful with that. So it's a plan. It's basically a roadmap on how to get there. But so many of us, this is, I think you'll like this statistics, and I'll wrap up with this. They say it only takes 20 hours to become really, really good at something. So if you studied with an expert for 20 hours, it's very likely you could probably charge for it. The thing is, most of us don't get started because we don't have a roadmap. We don't have an expert in mind that's going to show us it. We don't, we have access to everything on that phone, right? But we don't know how to apply it. Tony Robbins, Gary Vee, there's so many people that give away all their information, but they also charge 10 to 15 grand to go to a conference to put things in order of everything they already have on YouTube for you. Why? Because it's a little bit more of a roadmap. Because if I just type in Gary Vee on YouTube, I'm going to get hundreds of thousands of videos probably at this point, right? And I'm like, I don't know where to start. But if I go to a conference that says Business Mastermind, Becoming an Amazing Leader by Gary Vee, he puts all those things in order and then walks me through it and puts an expert with me to show me the way. And that's what the GSD sheet does. And I can't wait to show it off because I built it for this conference.
And I'm excited about just the tangibility of what it is that you're describing. It's very rare that you go to a workshop or a conference or somebody actually gives you a worksheet and says, this is what you need to do, now go do it. I think that's going to be really great. Just to kind of rehash though some of what you touched on, when you talk about that map of knowing where we are in an airport, how cool would it be in life if we actually had, actually it may be a little bit overwhelming, just be like, this is where you are, here's your life, and this is where you're at right now.
You're like, shit, or you're like, yes, I'm a little better than I thought I was.
Yeah, it could be good and bad, I guess. But being clear, at least, and honest with ourselves for that matter, about where we're at. 2, having some idea of the direction that we're going in and taking the time to establish that, like we discussed earlier. And then 3, the plan. And I'm a note taker here, and you know this about me, Shaun, I'm very structured. But when it comes to this idea of a plan, and I know you're going to break this down in way more detail at the conference, but it's important, one, to have a map. And that map can come from an expert, as you talked about, referencing an expert or a set of experts. And one thing that you did mention to me before, and we can finish up with this before we get started, was the significance of a time frame. And I know that a lot of times we make it maybe too easy for ourselves by not setting any kind of a deadline. We're in a mastermind group where we hold each other accountable for particular achievements. And part of that accountability is committing to a particular time frame, right? We make it easier for ourselves, I think, sometimes by not setting some type of, or associating some type of time frame to a goal that we may have. Can you comment on that just briefly?
It's one of the most powerful parts of the sheet is it's by when. When are you going to get this done by? Because if you have a deadline, that's why I'm in a mastermind and sitting in the seat, not as the coach, but we've hired a coach because I want to say, this is what I want to get done. And I'm going to get this done by, and I'm going to get this done by this particular point, because I'm at a point in my life where it's like, you can say time is fleeting, it's flying by when you're having fun, whatever you want to say, but it's like, I just want to make an impact. And so if I know by when, and I do things knowing that I have those calls each week, I was like, I don't want to let myself down. It's a commitment that I have to myself, and I have a commitment to these other people in the mastermind. And so by when, if I don't do it, I'm like disappointed. It doesn't mean I can't get there and kind of reset my target and stuff like that, but it's going to give me a motivation that by when. And then I get you guys kind of to help me sign off on it. The other people in the group are like, yeah, like, could you get it done by the end of the year? That seems crazy. Or it's like, are you phoning it in? Because it seems like you're already there. There's some easy wins. I don't want to cruise across every finish line, but I don't want to have to hustle and do these sprints where I'm up for 48 hours straight in order to get it done either. I want to challenge myself so that I can become the best version of me and work at a pace where it's there's the accomplishment. And I sit in a mastermind full of people that are willing to celebrate with me. And they're like, cool, that was a wonderful celebration. Now where are you headed? And when are you going to get there? Because you don't get to sit here very long. Islands are beautiful. Vacations are wonderful. Day 4 of a vacation, I'm like, I kind of want to get back to work because I have way more impact at work than I do sitting in this pool. It's wonderful to sit in a pool. And I tend to go to the gym when I'm there because I'm still me on vacation, and I get therapy from lifting, and I know I'm becoming a better version of me even on vacation. Now, do I take breaks and celebrate? 100%. By when is one of the most powerful things that you can write down for yourself, having an end date. It's wild how it works. And we have it all the time with albums. I'll give you one more example. With albums, one of the things that we teach is they're like, my clients never get back to me. It's like, yeah, because you don't have a deadline. If you just tell them you have an album in your package, great, here's a design, and you don't set up any guardrails for them, they don't know. But what I tell them is in the next 30 days, you have 3 rounds of changes that you can make, and here are the rules for the changes. It's really wild what happens on day 25. They're because they get a discount up until that 30-day mark, and the discount goes away. Day 25, they're like, I need to get this done. Why? Because I gave them a deadline. When I walk through the warehouse at KISS, I see so many dates that are from 2016. I was like, I wonder what happened there. The ones that I see that say 2022, I know they've probably been through the course that we teach or been educated by somebody that says, just set a deadline or commit to this and make sure that they get it, because they want to have it, but life gets busy. If you don't set deadlines, you may never arrive. There's no urgency to it.
There's no urgency. There's no accountability. So I think it's so important, and I'm glad that you highlight that, and I'm glad that we're just able to have this conversation in general. Thank you for bringing your perspective to the mix, not only to the podcast, but also the conference coming up. And again, for anybody listening in, if you haven't seen it yet, noobieconference.com, Noobie conference.com. You can learn more information about the conference. It is coming up January 10th and 11th here in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Make sure you go learn. Shaun, thank you so much for sharing again. And just remind our listeners one more time where they can find and follow you online.
Yeah, the best place to follow me is at Shaun Austin, ShaunAustin. I answer all my DMs there personally. So that's my personal brand, and you can find all my other things through that.
Perfect. Everybody, we'll link to all of these resources we discussed today in the show notes at newbiepodcast.com. Thanks so much for making time to listen in, and thanks again, Shaun.